last video, we learned how human use of the river over the last 400 years had caused problems for the river and the animals and plants that live there. In this video, we will learn what was done to solve these problems and what that means for the animals and plants. Let's remind ourselves, what were the problems with the river that made people decide it should be restored? Now Maureen and Gemma will show us what was done to solve these problems. See how many of these solutions you thought of. You know, we went to the classrooms, and the children came up with some really interesting ideas about what to do with the river. I think it would be really fun right now is to take these along and then go to the river and see what the scientists did, and then and see what they came up with and see if they match.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, let's take off right now. Wow, Gemma, can you believe it? The dam is gone and the river is running free, the first time in over 300 years. I'm imagining all these fish having free access to the entire river, and even the otters and the muskrats can then swim up the river easily. Now, most of the children decided that the dam should be gone, but there were a few that said something about, why don't we do a fish ladder?
And I think that's a reasonable idea, because there are plenty of places where fish ladders have been put in place, but there really is no reason to keep the dam there, and because it is such a big barrier to fish and other animals, it just made sense to just take it all out.
Remember the sand? Look at the rocky bottom now.
Which is good for all the other creatures that we've been talking about recently, and the plants as well. You get a lot more places where there's deeper waters and more vegetation for shade, which helps with the problem of warm, shallow waters that we were talking about earlier.
There are lots of riffles now that you can see with the rocks. They really did make the stream more oxygenated. There was one student that said, hey, we should take all that sand, dig it all up, put it in a dump truck, and take it onto those rocky beaches and cover up all the rocks so it would be nice sand.
I think that's a great idea.
I know, so do I. But probably easier, they dug down to make the wetlands, and then they put a lot of that sand for the uplands and made it a varied surface. So the uplands would be great for the trees that they want to grow for the shade that will make the river cooler. It's always great to have a wetlands around a river, because in flooding, of course, then there's lots of places for the river to overflow and just not destroy anything. What I remember is that it didn't come easy. The how was the hard part. How do you do all that? Well, there were these earth-moving vehicles that were all over the place. The place looked like the surface of the moon.
So how did they tackle the straightened channel?
They actually made, just like if you were at the beach and you were making a little road in the sand, they made these little roads in the river with the logs, and so they wouldn't get out of sync. They put vertical ones in to hold the other logs in. You can still see those logs. Did you notice them?
Yeah, they look like little telephone poles.
I know. What came up was even more miraculous.
Well, I'm seeing that there are a bunch of different types of plants here now.
You're right.
Were they planted?
Well, there were some plantings because they had ideas about what to put in and to see which ones grow in certain areas. But they found out there were so many more plants that grew that nobody had ever planted, nobody knew was there.
That's so interesting. So the seeds must have been buried down underneath all the sand and all the rock, and then once they removed it, they were able to grow after all these years.
It seems like it. It's amazing that any seeds would last that long. Imagine that river had been disturbed for so many years. So now we have a diverse culture outside of the river on the wetlands, and so the watershed area is much more natural. And now we have a meander, the river goes back and forth. we have the river, because it meanders, it scoops up some river bottom and pushes it over to one side. It makes this part deep, this part a little shallow, so you've got hiding places for fish and other organisms. And you've got some shallow areas that maybe, excuse me, the grass grows better. It sure is more natural than it was before.
Very beautiful.
Oh, look what we did.
I know,
We restored
awesome.
a river. Isn't that great? Yay! Oh, wait a minute.
We
We
the ones
didn't
who
do
did this.
it.
Well,
There
I
are-
have heard that it takes a village to restore rivers.
And it
so-
took a whole bit more than a village to restore this river.
Absolutely.
Look at how many people and how many organizations helped restore this river. It was really a community effort.